Have you ever stared at the story that you're currently writing and thought, what scene do I write next? If you feel stuck between scenes, I want to encourage you today. You're not stuck because you're not creative, and you're definitely not stuck because you're not a good enough writer. The truth is, you're stuck simply because you're asking the wrong question. So instead of asking what happens next, try asking, what is the next emotional shift in my sweet romance? When you write sweet romance, it is an emotional progression, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Hello, I'm Lorna Faith, and I write in many different genres of fiction under that author name, but I also write sweet romance books with my pen name, Melody Archer. I enjoy helping beginner writers who want to write sweet romance books that connect deeply with readers. In this video, I'll show you how to always know what to write in your next scene. Step 1. Identify the current emotional state of the scene you're writing. So look at the scene you're writing right now. Stop and write down these two statements. 1, right now she believes, blank. So she believes that maybe he's going to abandon her, or she believes that she's not worthy of love. Those are just examples. So then for the next statement, right now, he believes blank. So maybe he believes that love never lasts. Maybe in his own backstory, he was engaged before, or maybe he was in love before, and the woman left him. So he believes that women will abandon him, or that love doesn't last. Maybe he's wealthy and he believes that his past experience has told him that women are only after him for his money. Those are examples. Those are two statements to write down for your hero and your heroine, and to get a feel for the emotions that your characters are feeling right now. Here's an example from my own work in progress that I'm just finishing. It's a sweet beach romance titled Christmas Kisses at Seaside Cottage. This new sweet romance, it's a spin-off from my women's fiction Martha's Vineyard Sweet Beach Cove series. Heroine is Amy Chadwick, and she recently became a widow and discovered that she's pregnant. And she's been invited by her friend Jane Stafford to come stay for the holidays at her seaside cottage on the island of Martha's Vineyard. Once she gets there, Jane has a dinner party, and she meets wealthy hermit Theo Montgomery. Theo has inherited his grandfather's millions, but he also has wounds from his painful past. When Theo asks Amy to organize his late grandfather's large library, she agrees. Her background as an assistant librarian makes the task easier. However, as she goes through and organizes the books, she finds an old journal written by Theo's late grandfather. As she reads the journal, Amy discovers that on the night of the storm, when Theo's parents and his younger sister died, that Theo's uncle had a chance to act in some way to save them, but somehow he hesitated or he stayed silent. They're not exactly sure what happened. So during one evening, when Amy is forced to stay at Theo's home because of a storm, outside there's a storm, they begin to share more details about their lives. They start to become closer to each other, and Amy believes that this is the perfect time to tell Theo about her discovery in the journal. However, when Theo finds out the truth, he's shocked, he's in grief, he's angry, he lashes out at Amy. Why are you digging through things that don't concern you? And this also begins the unraveling, where Theo, it kind of shatters his belief in family. He starts to understand why perhaps he received the lion's share of the inheritance, etc., etc. So this brings me to answer those two statements that we started with that were by the hero and the heroine. So right now, Amy believes that she is risking everything by telling Theo the truth. As someone growing up in foster care, she understands deeply and fears being abandoned and being unloved. But despite her fears, she chooses to be honest with this man that she's beginning to care for deeply. And also right now, Theo believes he has a fear of trusting anyone and losing them again. He feels deeply his uncle's betrayal, and he feels also the loss of trust deeply, which is also why he lashes out at Amy. Their fragile connection is now being tested, and Theo must wrestle with whether to keep pushing Amy away or to let her in. And Amy is wrestling with her. She would like to run away, but is that she's wrestling with that right now because she's run away in the past. So where will she end up? As you're writing your story, the next question to ask is, what belief needs to be challenged next? So look at your current work in progress and ask yourself that. What belief in the hero and the heroine needs to be challenged next? So if I went back to my example, there are a few possibilities that I could choose from here. Theo could lash out at Amy and make her the enemy, or Theo could withdraw into like an ice cold distance, or Theo could break down, consumed with guilt that his family's death wasn't just an accident but deliberate. And because Amy's discovery shatters his fragile, safe story that he's been believing in his head, he might lash out at Amy and say things that really hurt. For example, you should have left that journal alone. You have no right to meddle in my family affairs, etc., etc. Ask the question, what beliefs need to be challenged next with my hero and heroine? And then that becomes your next scene. Step 2, you can also use the emotional ladder. Here is a simple progression that happens in a sweet romance. So first, there's curiosity. Second, there's interest. Third, there's resistance. Fourth, there's vulnerability. Fifth, there's choice. And sixth, then there's partnership when you reach the end of your book. So find out where you are in your story. So, for example, if you just wrote curiosity, your next scene will build interest. If you just wrote about attraction between the hero and the heroine, the next scene will introduce some kind of resistance or conflict. So remember that conflict is really what keeps readers turning the pages. Story is all about conflict. And, I've heard writing mentors say that in every scene there needs to be conflict. Read through your scenes and see what kind of conflict you find in every scene that you write. And stories do move when emotions shift. And one of those things for emotional transformation will be to establish your main character's motivation. This is really a key to creating unique emotions that reveal your character's true self. Sometimes the character tamps down what they believe is impossible for them to achieve. What is the character willing to fight for? Sacrifice for the betterment of others. And so these are interesting questions to ask your character. Step 3, the scene question trick. At the end of every scene, write one question to spark ideas. For example, will she agree to work with him? Will he tell her the truth? Will she admit that she cares? And then write the next scene answering that question. And then introduce a new question. So it should kind of go like this: scene, question, which leads into scene, which leads into question. And that way, momentum builds naturally in your story. So in the example that I gave before, I have to ask, will Amy agree to continue to work with Theo, or will she run away? And will Theo end up telling her the truth of how he really feels, or what he's really struggling with? These are questions that still need to be answered, that aren't answered yet in the book. Go back to your own story and ask these questions. Write one question to spark ideas that will help lead you to the next scene. And then step 4, when in doubt, add pressure to your characters. So if you truly don't know what to write next, apply pressure. Some examples could be a town event, a family expectation, a deadline, a storm, an old friend returning. Pressure forces decisions in your characters. In my example from before, I am going to choose another physical storm, an outside storm that happens on the island. But this time, somehow, I will bring together more of the townsfolk. Also, at this time, Theo will need to face his fear. Because remember, he still has wounds that his parents and his younger sister died in a storm when they were out in the water. And so somehow Theo will need to face that fear in this final storm. And then Amy, despite feeling hurt from Theo, will she choose to risk vulnerability and stay by his side to help him? What will happen there? So this final storm will test Theo's trust. Will he let Amy stay beside him rather than shutting her out for her safety? Maybe that's the excuse he'd give for her safety. But he doesn't really want to trust, right? He's not willing to choose love over fear. That's basically what the root of that is, right? He's not willing to let go of his fears of falling in love. Or is he? Now, this is what this final storm will test. And B, Amy's courage. It'll test Amy's courage. Will she stay and speak openly instead of retreating into silence or self-blame or perhaps running away? What will she do? How will her growth be tested? And so their actions in this scene must visually and emotionally show their growth and their transformation. This part of the story, near the end, needs to show that these main characters are doing the opposite of how they would have reacted at the beginning of the book. So it needs to show their transformation. Decisions create scenes. So look at your own story, at your own sweet romance, and if you need to add some pressure, think of doing a town event, or maybe there's a family expectation or a deadline. Something's coming down the pike and they have 5 days, and if it's not done, maybe they'll lose millions. Or an old friend returning. Maybe it's your heroine's old boyfriend, and that's maybe going to cause a bit of jealousy in the new boyfriend now. And so those are just ideas, but choose something that will cause some pressure between the two main characters. And this will help to bring emotional movement and a shift in your story, which will help you, which will really make it easy for you to write the next scene. And once you start thinking in terms of emotional shifts instead of random events, it'll make it really easy for you to understand what the next sweet romance scene is that you need to write. And you'll rarely feel stuck again. And so I encourage you to begin to try that. And if you need extra help, I have created a sweet romance story starter pack PDF, and you can grab it for free when you click the link in the description below. So I hope you have fun writing the next scene in your sweet romance, and I'll see you in the next video.